Chapter 2 Chosen Ones. A few weeks have passed since James and Alice's incredible adventure in the lost jungle of time. The days were filled with the ordinary rhythms of suburban life, schoolwork, chores, and weekend family hangouts. But the memory of the jungle lingered in their minds like an itch they couldn't scratch. They hadn't told anyone about what they'd experienced, not their parents nor their friends. It felt too unbelievable, too impossible even for them. The world outside seemed so small now, so ordinary compared to the sprawling jungle where time itself seemed to bend. But something had changed in James. His curiosity, once fueled by simple daydreams, had transformed into an obsession. The map that had led them to the jungle hung in front of his desk, displayed carefully as though it were some kind of trophy. He studied it every day, tracing the lines with his finger, examining the faded symbols that seemed to pulse with hidden meaning. There had to be more, he thought. The map had shown them only one corner of that world, one glimpse of the past. What more was there to be discovered? One afternoon, James couldn't hold it back any longer. He showed Alice the map again.
"We need to go back,"
he said, his voice filled with urgency. Alice looked at him, her brow furrowed.
"What do you mean, go back? I thought we agreed this was something we couldn't talk about with other people," James said, pacing around his room. "And we were only in the jungle for a few hours at most. What if there's something we missed? Something important? Something we were supposed to find?"
He stared at the map, his mind racing.
"We could learn more about where we were. Maybe find a way to understand what this place is. What if there are other time periods in there? Other worlds? You were excited when we first got back. We both started packing right away."
Alice hesitated. The jungle had been amazing, yes. It had been thrilling, but also dangerous. There had also been something unsettling about it. The sense that time itself was unraveling, that the jungle existed outside of the normal laws of reality, left a weight in her chest.
"I don't know, Jamie,"
she said slowly.
"It was dangerous last time. We got chased by dinosaurs. We were lucky that we got away safe. And what if you're right about other worlds? What if we end up in the wrong time? Or worse, what if we don't come back at all?"
James stopped pacing and turned to her, his face full of determination.
"But what if we missed something? What if we don't go back and something happens to that world, or to us?"
Alice looked at him, knowing that once he had made up his mind, there was no stopping him. And deep down she knew she would follow him. The adventuring spirit was in her blood also.
"Okay, but I think you're being a bit dramatic with all the other worlds talk,"
she said quietly.
"But we need to be careful. This time we're going to prepare better."
The next weekend they set out again. Armed with more than just chips and juice, they packed their backpacks with water bottles, a first aid kit, and a few tools just in case. The map was folded in James's pocket, and the excitement in his chest felt almost unbearable. They made their way to the mountain range, retracing their steps from their last journey. The air felt different this time, colder, as though the world itself was aware of their return. When they arrived at the cave's entrance, it was just as they remembered it. Dark, quiet, and waiting. This time, however, something was different. There was an energy in the air, a sense that the cave had changed since the last time they visited. It felt alive.
"What do you think?"
Alice asked, her voice barely a whisper. The shadow of doubt was creeping back into her mind. James didn't answer, though. He simply stepped forward, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement, and Alice followed him into the cave. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, they noticed the walls shimmering faintly, as though the stone itself was breathing. The path seemed to pulse with an unseen rhythm, and it felt as if they were being drawn in further. Then, without warning, the ground beneath their feet trembled.
"I don't like this part,"
Alice exclaimed, grabbing James's arm. The walls of the tunnel began to crack, and the air was filled with the sound of a distant, echoing roar. Familiar and terrifying roar.
"It's happening again,"
James said with his eyes wide.
"The jungle's calling to us."
Before Alice could respond, the tunnel gave way once more, and they plunged into the thick, vibrant jungle below. Just as they fell, James saw a hole in front of them in the floor, Not thinking much of it at the time, he wondered if that was the hole they fell through the first time. Then gravity kicked in and he and Alice fell into the jungle. This time, however, the jungle was different. The air was heavier, more humid, and the sky was a deep burning orange, as if the sun was setting on the strange world. The jungle was more alive than before, louder, more vibrant, more chaotic.
Do you feel that?
Alice asked, her voice low.
It's like the jungle's alive in a way it wasn't before.
James nodded, scanning the area, the trees towering above them, their branches twisting like snakes. Strange creatures, some with scales like armor, others with glowing eyes, darted through the underbrush. The ground was soft, almost spongy, and beneath the surface, something seemed to stir, like the pulse of a hidden heartbeat. They began to move forward, but something caught their attention. A sound, distant but unmistakable. It was the rumbling of thunder. Alice whimpered, looking up at the sky, but James grabbed her by the arm and gave her a reassuring smile. Before they could process what was happening, the ground beneath them trembled once more, and a massive shadow passed overhead. It was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. A massive winged beast larger than any dinosaur they'd encountered soared over them. Its wings were like great sails cutting through the air with terrifying grace. It let out a call that seemed to shake the jungle around them.
What is that thing?
Alice breathed, her voice full of awe and fear. James was frozen, staring up at the beast.
That didn't look like a dinosaur. This is something different.
As the creature circled above, it began to descend, its wings flapping like the sound of thunder. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet sounded as if it had been cracked open, and the jungle seemed to shift again, as though the fabric of time was unraveling. The air grew thick with an ancient energy, and James realized something terrible. The jungle wasn't just a relic of the past. It was a living, breathing entity that spanned across different eras, fractured, unstable, and consistently shifting.
We should find some shelter.
Alice said as her face turned pale. James nodded, but as they turned to leave, they were confronted by something that made their blood run cold. A group of figures emerged from the trees, humanoid, but not quite human. Their eyes gleamed with a strange, otherworldly light, and they moved with an eerie, silent grace.
Time and space is not meant to be tampered with.
One of them spoke, its voice like a whisper in the wind.
The jungle has chosen you. Follow us, and we will provide shelter and food for you both.
Nervous, both Alice and James took a step away from the strange beings.
Why should we trust you? How do we know that you won't harm us?
James said, moving Alice behind him.
Trust is a funny thing, James. But if you would like to brave this world alone, that is your choice.
And the beings then turned and retreated back into the brush. Startled, James turned to Alice.
I don't know how they know my name, but I feel like we should go with them.
Alice nods and grips her backpack tight as they follow through the bushes.